Now resume. Prior to the suspension, the House had resolved itself into a standing finance committee. To that we now revert.
Oh, okay. This House is now in Standing Finance Committee. We are debating Head 27. I need to remind members that we are debating Head 27 and only Head 27. So in your questioning and answering, I suggest that you stick to it. Thank you. Who is next?
For your benefit.
Trying to remember who's next. Right. You want me to go here? Yeah. No, he was first. The House recognizes, the honourable member for St. James North.
I first wish to, of course, congratulate the honourable member for St. James Central and his team for being the first ministry in this new historic change to the way we present the estimates and deal with the finances and expenditure, revenue and expenditure for our country, our people, for the next financial year. And also wish to commend that honourable member and his team for winning some international awards over the last few months. He's doing a fine job, as we in Cabinet and government expect he would do. Minister, I noticed in your ministry's strategic goals that you have that you will foster the development of the full potential of the tourist sector in order to provide maximum employment opportunities for persons engaged directly or indirectly in the industry. And in fact, that's the first strategy, as well as the second, to provide a strategy for the doubling of foreign exchange earning capacity of the tourist sector by 2013. In other words, within the next 12 years, both noble goals. And Minister, you and I have the honor to represent adjoining constituencies in St. James on the west coast, the northwest coast of Barbados, one of the main tourist belt areas. And of course, within this context, we both want to see increased employment among our respective constituents in the main foreign exchange earning sector of our country. I think we accept clearly that the spread of the tourist dollar, the foreign exchange earnings, must be as wide as possible. And we as a government and your ministry, you as a minister, committed to realizing the goal of a spread in tourist dollar for the betterment of our constituents, their socio-economic lives, and that of their family. And, you know, I'm just wondering, of course, what particular goals you and your ministry have in mind to enhance the quality of life of our respective constituents, and those on the the West Coast in particular and the North as well, St. Peter, in terms of probably community-based tourism, allowing more vending probably in touristic areas, so that our people at the grassroots level, at the community level, can benefit more than they have done in the past in terms of access to tourism. We know that a lot of tourists come to Barbados and want to mix with the people as well. They need to. They come here for the cultural experience and...
Honourable Member, you have 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. For the people-to-people exchange. And I'm wondering if you could expand on that particular issue. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm grateful to the honourable member. The honourable member began on a point which I really thank him for, because I should have taken the opportunity in my opening comments to acknowledge the significant achievements and the plaudits placed on the shoulders of the CEO of the BTMI, who is the region's leading tourism executive of the year. And behind him sits the Caribbean's hotelier of the year, who happens to be the chairman of the BTMI. So I consider myself, and by extension the ministry and the sector, fortunate to have such accomplished assistance by my side. Specifically, the honourable member spoke to how we might make the life of people on the West Coast better, and that obviously is a matter near and dear to my heart, because, as he points out, our constituencies are located there. There are a few things that I would want to say, and I would also wish to take the opportunity, Madam Chair, to invite some others to speak as well. The investment issue is perhaps the point of departure. Frankly, we are working hard, notwithstanding the planned investment conference, to make sure that we continue to attract investment wherever possible. The delay caused by the start of, for the restart of this House from 2 o'clock until this time was largely because I was in a conference meeting with the Prime Minister, who could not be physically present here today, but was able to speak to us on camera with a potential investor, and we were discussing the very strong likelihood of being able to preside over an investment on the West Coast, which will see another 100 rooms being put into the product mix at a luxury level. The question of community tourism is obviously one that comes readily to mind, and I would want the honourable member to take note of the fact that there has been the commencement of a project in the Holders Hill area, where we will try to marry the tremendous cricketing experience and expertise of that area. Several players of the Barbados team, and indeed West Indies team, have come from that Holders Hill area historically. And we would want to marry that with a community tourism experience which allows the community as a whole to become part and parcel of the interface with tourists, whether it be from the perspective of guided tours or from the perspective of food and beverage and other experiences, horseback trails, etc. There are a couple of owners of horses in the district as well. The Whole Town area, the honourable member is well aware that our manifesto commits to the development of Whole Town as an entertainment area, and when I launched the Whole Town Festival, I acknowledged that fact and have already named a committee which will be working on the Whole Town project. And of course, one of the additional things that we are trying to do as we explore new places for cruise ships to land, one of them is also potentially Whole Town, but the work has to be completed by the Coastal Zone Management Unit. I think, ma'am, that connects us also to the experience at Lime Grove, which is a significant capital investment, but also must now be supported by the level of traffic and ancillary activity, whether it be restaurants, bars, music, jazz experiences, play, drama. People in Sunset Crest, for example, have requested a meeting with me because they would like to play their role in the process. Ma'am, I think that we are full of opportunity, and the intention of the ministry is to tap into that in every community wherever it is expressed, because the good news is Barbadians are getting it and want to get on board to play their part. I would want to pause at this stage, ma'am, preserve the remainder of the time, and invite Mrs. Marsha Aline, who is the acting head of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, to join me at the table so that she might be able to expand further.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Madam Chair, at the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, and by extension the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., our mandate is to ensure that tourism is for, by, and of the people of Barbados. And as a result of that, there are a number of creative ideas speaking about community tourism that we are also working on. In 2017, we actually bought McIntyre Pipe from Jamaica to actually speak to Barbadians about community tourism, because they've done such a great job of doing community tourism within Jamaica. And we have identified a number of areas within Barbados that community tourism can actually be housed, and they're Pinelands, Carrington Village, Rosettes, Black Rock, Church Village, St. Philip, Crane, Haynesville, and Holders Hill. And we want to ensure that the Barbados Tourism Product Authority provides an opportunity for persons who have creative ideas to come into the BTP, or we go and explore those creative ideas and help them to take the product to market so that there's economic stability and economic empowerment for all Barbadians, because we want an inclusive tourism.
Go ahead. Yes, you can.
Chair, yeah.
You may have a supplementary question.
Right. Minister, you had spoken before lunch in terms of physical attractions in our country, which can, make a tourist decide to come here rather than another country, because all of us in the Caribbean have the same basics in terms of beauty, natural beauty, and sun and sea. And therefore, to get a competitive edge, we have to have something more. I believe that the leader of the Florida Cruise Association, I believe it was, recently on a visit to Barbados, mentioned that we need to have the wow experience, and I totally agree with her on that. We are well aware that the previous government, in the 10 last years, 10 years, in fact, and 3 months that it occupied, the government up to May 24th last year essentially did nothing in this regard. In fact, we lost tourist attractions in that period, the mini golf course at Bowes, Graham Hall Swamp, of course, and we know what happened down there in terms of the water sewerage, etc. And I'm just wondering, Minister, what strategies you and your ministry may have in terms of concessions, perhaps to Barbadians, including, of course, those who live in the north and the west of the country, to get more physical attractions in our countries, and knowing full well, of course, that these will not only be of benefit to our tourists, but also to the citizens of Barbados, those people who live in Barbados, and how we would market and promote these attractions as well going forward.
Honourable Member, I welcome the granular detail that your question is trying to bring out. The truth of the matter is that perhaps for too long, and I concede that this may itself have also been a weakness since I have been minister, for too long the methodology of accessing concessions, I think, has been not immediately made top of mind awareness for the average Barbadian, and that should be corrected, so that many people feel, or have tended to feel, that they would not qualify because of the fact that they are not a big investor or what have you. And that is simply not true. The ministry can give approvals for tourism concessions once we are satisfied that a legitimate case has been made for it to be a tourism product. And that approval will come from the minister once the recommendations have been made by the technical staff who do the assessment, and we are in a position to proceed from there. In terms of the physical bricks and mortar build, there would be obviously concessions available for the importation of those things that needed to be imported in the process of building, and that is not limited to any race, class, creed, or color, or district in Barbados. So it is something that I think the ministry, once approached from this time forward, would be very happy to share and discuss information on with you, and I'm happy to have that done as a matter of priority. I have invited Dr. Kerry Hall, who is the Director of Tourism Development, to reflect a little bit on the second question that you asked, which is the I think, more salient one insofar as it impacts on the dollars and cents proposition for people across Barbados.
Thank you, Minister. Good day, Madam Chair. I would like to speak on two issues, the issue of visitor spend and the issue of what you spoke to with respect to Barbados being more than a beach. That is what I took from your statement just now. First, I would like to start by saying this is a strategy that started under the BTPA with respect to devising a comprehensive diversification and differentiation strategy to take Barbados' tourism industry to the next level. We are an extremely iconic destination. The Barbados brand is powerful globally, but we are a mature destination in need of refreshment, rejuvenation, and reinvention if we are going to remain competitive with the over 180 destinations across the world that are offering a tourism proposition. From the perspective of diversification, we are fully aware that the main reasons why visitors come to Barbados is to enjoy our natural assets. It may be our beautiful beaches, our waters, our reefs, our wetlands, our caves, etc. And they are a very, very critical component to the Barbados tourism offering. However, what we're seeing here as we do our research, both primary and secondary, is that there is a movement afoot that started in the 1980s with a new tourist driving a new tourism. And these individuals are looking for more than a beach. They're looking for authenticity, they're looking for immersion, and they're looking for distinctiveness of place. When they go to a destination, they want to know that they went to Barbados as opposed to the Maldives, St. Lucia, Macedonia, or anywhere around the world. And the way Barbados is going to remain competitive is to ensure that we're able to set ourselves apart from the rest of the world. And this country has so much to offer. And in many cases, we are only just scratching the surface. And what we need to do now is dig down deep and to eke out those things about Barbados, to tell the story of this nation in a way that would, as I said, set us apart. Now, the diversification I'm talking about is, yes, paying homage to our wonderful natural assets, but also looking at the other things about Barbados that not only are visitors looking for, but what we could do really well. So this is where we now strengthen our intersectoral linkages. We're talking about creating a sustainable tourism industry, one that will not just serve us today, but for generations to come. So we're looking to strengthen those linkages not only with agriculture and fisheries, with the manufacturing sector, with the cultural industries, international business, sports, blue economy, you name it, etc. In order to branch out and to be able to capitalize, particularly in areas of our cultural heritage, the culinary aspect of Barbados, health and wellness, definitely our communities for sure. But not only are we going to diversify the tourism industry as we are diversifying into other markets around the world, we also are going to differentiate the Barbados brand. What differentiates Barbados? And when I ask that, I mean what sets us apart from the rest of the world? What do we have here to offer that cannot be offered anywhere else? And we have identified so many wonderful things, a lot of them heritage-wise that Barbados has, and I won't go into it because it will take up the entire 5 minutes. So what we do is capitalize on that, quadruple down on those, particularly in our marketing, etc. So when we showcase our brand to the world, we could showcase a fresh, brand new Barbados brand, which will not only entice our very high repeat clientele, but also will increase our market share. Because for those individuals out there who think we are just a beach, but realize there is more to Barbados than just that. Now, in terms of increasing visitor spend, we all know that tourism pays the bills. We know that it's a major foreign exchange earner, it's a driver of the economy. But even though we know that tourism is indeed the goose that lays the golden egg, we also understand that it has the capacity to fold its own nest if not properly managed, planned, or developed. So this is what we're going to do now in terms of the visitor spend, because tourism is a business, and the reason why we invest so heavily in developing the industry is that we want to not only generate employment on a year-round basis, but we want to generate tourism revenues to sustain our economy. We've seen that we have not, even though we do get over $1 billion a year from tourism, US, there's so much more that could be done. And one of the areas that we are going to be focusing on, there's a lot going on in Barbados. A lot of Barbadians have answered the call, and they've developed a lot of new activities, new experiences, because that's what the visitors are looking for. They're looking for experiences. And what we found is, even though there's a lot going on in the island, a lot of the visitors don't seem to know that it's happening. And the domestic marketing, once we get our visitors here, being able to get to the visitor to let them know what is happening on the island in a more effective way will pay great dividends. Not only are we doing that, another way to do that is also to ensure that the average Barbadian gets their share of the visitor economy. There are a lot of Barbadians, particularly in communities, and there's a lot of scope for community tourism in this country, to go into the communities with festivals, to development of cottage industries. And what we need to do is create pathways from the visitor to these individuals to ensure that once they are aware that they're Barbadians doing wonderful things, either putting on fantastic activities, or they're
could you wrap up your answer?
Okay, yes, I'll wrap it up. They're making local chocolates, local wines. Of course, you know, our local rum, Barbados invented rum. That is a point of differentiation that needs to be further fleshed out. But by doing that and the development of a mobile app, we will be able to cut out the third-party intermediary and reach the visitor. We're hoping to open up those pathways of knowledge so that Barbadians will know what is going on the island. They will come to these events, may it be NIFCA, Mahalia's Corner, Christmas Jazz, any community events. And we will be able to unleash and ensure that we engender economic recovery from the bottom up.
Thank you so much. Any more?
Minister, just before we broke for lunch, you started to speak about and refer to another key objective in the strategies of your ministry, as noted by the estimates, to distinguish Barbados as a fully accessible, inclusive destination in the region. And of course, that touches on an area that I have spent, 30 years of my adult life trying to assist in, the cause of people with disabilities. You correctly said that this is not only an issue pertaining to tourists, but to people who reside in Barbados who have disabilities as well. But the fact of the matter is, yes, that there is a substantial market out there. I think generally said about 5 to 7% of the people in the world have some form of disability, physical disability. A lot of people, as we know from North America especially, have won large awards, monetary awards, through cases from which they obtained or sustained the disability, and therefore they have money. And we need to get a larger share of the tourism market for people with disabilities who travel. Maybe they can have conferences here, hold conferences here, and of course gain greater connections with all persons with disabilities in that sense, etc. And I was just wondering, in terms of your ministry's market strategy to try to attract more persons with disabilities as tourists to Barbados.
I think that the honourable member has guided us, Madam Chair, to a very important matter which is before Barbados, and which, as I said before lunch, has been left unaddressed for far too long. And immediately upon assuming the chair of Minister of Tourism and International Transport, I made it abundantly clear with respect to both our facilities in the international transport context and our facilities in the general hospitality sector for tourism, that I think this was a matter that must now be wrestled to the ground and dealt with firmly and finally. The truth is that Barbados does not and has not paid enough attention to the standards and quality of the services that we provide by way of creating a regulatory environment that will firmly and decisively facilitate universal access. To be candid with you, we have done well, but we have done well in spite of ourselves. And the painful thing for me, I say yet again, is that by alienating and excluding persons with disabilities who are visitors, we are also in effect alienating and excluding Barbadians who have disabilities. And we are not treating ourselves and our families and friends and neighbors kindly. And everyone who is within earshot of my voice knows that he or she is really only one diagnosis away from having a disability. You can wake up early in the morning, and by nighttime you have one because of a slip and fall accident. As the honourable member pointed out, you may have some motor vehicular accident for which you may be well rewarded financially, but it does not change the reality that you've been saddled with a disability for the rest of your natural existence. Now, ma'am, what can we do? I think that, let us look at the airport experience, for example. 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of being able to go up there in order to open formally the services of our AmbuLift, so that there is a special piece of equipment, and the second one is now on order, where the Caribbean Aircraft Handling Company has been able to overcome the fact that we do not have jet bridges to facilitate roll-on, roll-off of persons who are in wheelchair. So they've created a facility where you can lift them and a few people who are with the person with disability to the level of the aircraft in air-conditioned comfort, lighted at night, etc., so that they can have greater access and easier access. I believe, ma'am, that part of the advantages of the proposed divestment of the airport, attracting as it is intended to do about 150 million United States dollars, will finally put us in a position where we can build on an additional mezzanine floor at Grantley Adams International and have the necessary jet bridges so as to facilitate that roll-on, roll-off traffic. But I think that regulatory environment, which is the point of my departure, is the one I have to speak to the country about. We have to come to a point where we have the regulations in place that will require all new investments in tourism. The hotel sector, the restaurants, the villas, etc., to be able to have, or to be required to have facilities which accommodate persons with disabilities. And we have all traveled around the world where we know that in a hotel, it is a common thing, for example, in Miami, with whom we compete, that you go into a hotel room and, or hotel, and there will be rooms which are specially designated for persons with disabilities, so that the cupboards are structured differently, that you can hang your clothes more comfortably if you're wheelchair bound. The doors carry the signage in Braille so as to tell you what you do in case of a fire, etc. The facilities are specially laid out, bathrooms retrofitted so as to accommodate wheelchair persons. The audiovisual equipment in the room is done to assist persons with hearing impairments. These are all things that, if they happen in Barbados, happen by happenstance and chance. But it cannot be that we leave it to chance. We must now make sure that by a regulatory framework, these things must be done as a percentage of the room stock, so that we make sure that we are able to truly market ourselves to the world in a tangible and realistic way as being fully accessible Barbados. And if we can do that, we separate ourselves and distinguish ourselves from the rest of the Eastern Caribbean who are not there yet, and we make ourselves more competitive by extension.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for the City.
Chair, Honourable Minister and your team, we have heard about the adjustment that the BTMI has to make in terms of from private to public body. And I'm very interested in finding out from the chairman of the BTMI what role, in his opinion, can the private sector play in advancing the cause of tourism in Barbados?
For the benefit of the chairman who was coming to the table, I think the question was what role can the private sector play in advancing
the cause of tourism in Barbados?
Well, I think the PPP is the first step at working towards enhancing tourism sector jointly with the public sector. The PPP as it stands is really a partnership that allows for better collaboration of the marketing of Barbados and brand Barbados more specifically to start out with, and then promoting Barbados as a destination. I think it's important to differentiate between the two, and that is brand Barbados to me is one that we take lightly, and we promote a lot about promotions in terms of discounting programs and so on, but brand Barbados makes Barbados an aspirational destination. This is something that has been there for years because of our affiliation with our main source market, the UK. And we haven't done a lot of brand marketing over the years. I mean, we've done it, but I think we need to strengthen on that a little bit. But having the PPP now allows the private sector the opportunity to be involved in developing the marketing message, in developing the brand and what we're sending out there. It's easy to sit back as a private sector and criticize what we see is going wrong. But I think by being participative now, we have to take responsibility for our own actions. And the PPP allows that partnership to work in that method. But it also means you have to pay to play. And by paying to play means coming to the table to be part of the funding of the BTMI, participating in it, and then taking control of the destiny a little bit more. But that collaboration then will help us, not just the BTMI, but the BTPA, to look at various segments, because as we look at the marketing, there are various aspects of tourism. There's a DTS that a lot of us forget about. We talk about hotel rooms and restaurants and so on, but there are other things along that make up the tourism sector. So as we're doing our marketing with the PPP, we're allowed to give better focus on some of those things that would otherwise be ignored. And I think by working together, we'll be able to chart a better course, or a course that is more effective for us as a tourist destination within the Caribbean.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to perhaps ask the chairman if he would be okay. Just want to ask the chairman of BTMI if perhaps if he could, in some detail or not so much detail, tell us about any pending strategies to continue to improve on arrivals and airlift into Barbados.
In terms of the strategies, I mean, we've talked about new markets. We have our existing markets, which are the main source markets being the UK, USA, Canada, Caribbean, and so on. But as we know, those markets, there's some volatility in those markets with external factors that are outside of our control. And I think we have to be, we have to strategize in terms of how we're going to deal with some of these issues that could potentially face us. And by that I mean the weakening of the sterling or the strengthening of the sterling. This sterling is something we have to watch. So there are a lot of factors out there, but at the same time, there are new markets that we need to look at. And airlift is going to be the first issue. I mean, I think we have a mature product. So it's not that we don't have rooms. We have rooms. We just have to make sure we have the facility to be able to get people here. So starting with the airlift, there are new airline or new lifts that we're going to have to look at from various source markets that give us a better connectivity. And some of those we're already working on, so we're going to have better connections. And at some time, hopefully, the minister will be able to give a little bit more information on that. Also, in terms of the attractions and stuff that we need to create throughout the year, I think during the winter, most hotel rooms are sold out. We don't have a problem in the winter. It is the summer that we have lower occupancies. And we have to find ways of creating activities, creating events that will attract different people from different markets as well, and to diversify a little bit at the same time. The Caribbean market is actually a pretty good market. It used to be a lot stronger before and has the potential to be stronger. We have to work on those things, and we're working on those things.
Any supplementary? Okay, Honorable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask the Honorable Minister about Program 40, Subprogram 599, the National Tourism Program, and the balance of resources between what we see as non-statutory recurrent, where the reference was made earlier to the professional services, and the capital. There is a preponderance in favor of the capital expenditure under the tourism program, the National Tourism Program that was referenced earlier. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of background to my question and an example, if I could use an example. Now, the focus of this government is to focus on a facilitation of investment, and the minister has mentioned earlier the investment division works very close, of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, works very closely with the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport on this thrust and this drive. But the focus is and must be at this point, given our economic position, our fiscal position, the facilitation rather perhaps than the allocation of our own resources to these kinds of tourism investment projects. As an example, I make reference to one that falls within the investment division that was also referenced earlier in these proceedings, and that is Sam Lord's Castle, and the $30 million that is seen here as allocated to Sam Lord's Castle, which is to be officially reduced in these estimates to 18 million. And the reason it is to be reduced to 18 million is because of this government's intention to sell it on, as has been referenced earlier. Now, if an entity is not profitable to the private sector or cannot be proven to be profitable to the private sector, then why would a government, and certainly why would the last administration, have proposed to want to retain such a huge stake in it? And so for that reason, we are sure that we will be able to show the venture to be profitable to the private sector. And so there is a reduction from the 30 million shown to 18 million. And this goes to this government's focus, and certainly I would imagine your ministry's focus on facilitation of investment. Given as well that in late December of last year, this Parliament also approved a supplementary of 6.6 million Barbados dollars to fulfill our commitment to the counterpart financing, to show that in addition to the facilitation, we are willing to have a marginal contribution to show that we are, in fact, in the business of proving to investors that these are viable projects. I would need to make reference as well to the fact that just under US $42 million has already been drawn down from Exim Bank.
You have a minute left, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chair. With another $9 million pending to be drawn down. And this goes as well to the point that was made earlier about the importance of public-private partnerships as we prepare for growth and try to drive growth in the tourism sector. And finally, given that even though we as a government inherited this long-standing issue of the acquisition of the land on which the development is being done, that the last government had never settled, that we are currently settling it as a part of our commitment to facilitate the investment. Given all those factors, and coming back to my original question on subprogram 599, how are we and how is the National Tourism Program going to ensure that we develop the capacity of people to be able to take advantage of the growth in the sector? Because certainly, while our responsibility is not necessarily to make our own capital investments in these kinds of projects, certainly one of the responsibilities that remains with us is to ensure that we build the capacity of our people to be able to take advantage of any growth opportunities. Lord's Castle, for example, is a 450-room investment that is going to expand opportunities for people to get involved. The question is, does the National Tourism Program allocate the necessary resources to do that kind of capacity building, given here that there seems to be such a focus on capital expenditure? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Nicole Aline. I am the Chief Tourism Development Officer at the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. To the question that was asked in terms of whether the National Tourism Program can enable Barbadians to be more integrally involved in the tourism industry, if I can encapsulate it that way, I would say yes to that question. I will make first specific reference to one of the products being developed under that program, that being a tourist urban route and amenities and accessibility enhancements as well within historic Bridgetown. The government's role through the Ministry of Tourism is really facilitatory in that we are putting down the infrastructure for that tour, the different elements, whether it is signage, whether it is the amenities, grading and improving sidewalks to allow for persons with disabilities and so on to be able to participate in that particular activity. But at the end of the day, the private sector then comes in, or which includes, of course, the general public, to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that that tour provides. For example, the infrastructure is there with a tour that has been delineated, that has been signed, that has been identified, and there's nothing that stops a private sector, a general member of the public from coming and saying, well, I want to now create my own tour using the groundwork that has been provided through the National Tourism Program, for example. And I would say that it complements existing programs as well, which the Ministry of Tourism has done. I cite here the tour guiding program that was specifically done for historic Bridgetown and its Garrison or UNESCO World Heritage Site, where out of that program, one of the participants developed her own tour guiding company, and she uses the route that training did. So I'm making the point to say that once this route has been put in place, any person can then take advantage of those opportunities that allows them to develop a tour guiding business, for example. That's one. Secondly, the route provides improvements to the area, so there's opportunities to use our various alleys, whether we're talking about Manchester Lane, Liverpool Lane, and so on, which are adjacent to the Careenage. You have a beautiful marine scape looking at you. There's nothing that stops a private individual from saying, can I set up a little sidewalk cafe here? Can I create that opportunity now that the government has put certain things in place to allow that particular business to thrive? So I say the opportunities are there, the potential is there. There's nothing that limits anyone from determining how best they can use the infrastructure, as I would loosely call it, that the National Tourism facilitates. And that's in one particular area. And if it is required, I can elaborate on other areas.
Any supplemental?
Just a follow-up, Madam Chair. I made a reference earlier to the many tourism investments that are coming on stream, and I'm sure that the minister in his response will want to make specific reference to some of these and how these are going to help us with the renewal and regeneration of Bridgetown, and in fact the entire urban corridor from where Savannah currently is up to the old Paradise. Certainly it is one of the goals and targets of this administration, both through the investment division and your ministry, Honorable Minister, to make this area more attractive as an investment opportunity. But I would have thought that the response with respect to how we develop the capacity of Barbadians would perhaps have made reference to what are the sub-programs or what are the activities in the National Tourism Program that expressly seek to provide training, or even perhaps where other training is contemplated, because it is one thing to say that there is nothing that stops, but what is it that facilitates? And so I think that given that we are looking to redevelop the urban corridor, which certainly I would want to include opportunities for those people in St. Michael's South Central, for example, who have a particular interest as residents of the greater Bridgetown area in seeing a tourism product that not just focuses on the infrastructure and the capital investment that's required for Bridgetown and the greater Bridgetown area, but that makes the express investment in the people, in their training, in being able to facilitate, not just to say it is accessible because we are not stopping you, but to be able to facilitate their participation expressly. One of the things that we have said to the people of Barbados certainly is that while we may not be able to protect every single job, we will certainly endeavor to protect every single Barbadian and their right to work. And so I would think that this National Tourism Program provides a particular opportunity to be able to do that, in particular with reference to how we are developing that urban corridor as a new and refreshed tourism product. And so perhaps if you could make mention of the allocation for any training or capacity building activities in the program, that would allow us to do that. Thank you.
Honourable Member, let me start from the perspective that the private sector, in our view, must run the tourism industry. And I say that with respect to the investment aspect of the question. As with Sam Lord's Castle and any other entity that you can think of, if the private sector does not have an appetite for it, then one has to ask the question why an experienced, very mature set of tourism professionals in the private sector find no appetite for a particular project. Why then would government want to go headlong into it? Especially when government might be placing at risk borrowed resources in order to achieve an effort of success. So if it doesn't attract the appetite of the private sector, then I don't think that we are going to be going there. With respect to the broader investment question of the South Coast, I thought that I had in a previous question answered that, but let me make myself abundantly clear. If we begin from Savannah Hotel and we work our way towards Bridgetown, by the time you get, and including all of the beachfront along the way, all the way down to when you get to following past Carlisle Car Park, turning the corner and going in the direction of Trevor's Way, where we have elaborate car park spaces on the beach, where we have old warehouses which are fallen into disuse in front of the beach, where we have a number of entities which are of lesser economic value but occupying prime beach land, we realize that we are rendering ourselves less than competitive. The purpose of having an investment conference in the early stages of April is essentially to bring a number of investors to the island so as to present them with the opportunities there in that catchment area, as the honourable member quite rightly points us to, and in addition to others which are in the south, for example, the Silver Sands, one I referred to, the one behind Paragon, then in the north at Harrison's Point where they're about 85 acres, and some others as well, with a view to encouraging them or stimulating an appetite for them to make investment. And again, it is the private sector that must drive this investment. It is not for government to attempt to do. What we have, as the honourable member quite rightly makes the point, to do is to facilitate that investment. More directly with respect to the average person in her constituency and indeed in mine, the fact of the matter is that, as we heard immediately after lunch, there's a Jamaican specialist in this field by the name of, I think, Diana McIntyre Pike, who has come to Barbados and who has had some meetings with Barbadians who are interested in developing tourism product at a community level. We are embracing that approach. The National Tourism Program does not, in and of itself, undertake to finance training. But what the ministry does through the BTMI and the BTPA is to work with people in the individual communities so as to help facilitate that training. The honourable members will recall the question put to me by the member for St. Peter when he asked about the opportunities for training for persons who have an interest in tourism development in Speightstown. The reality is that, again, once we can be approached with a project proposal, and I urge honourable members to give thought to those people in their communities with whom they would wish to work in order to build out that project proposal, then we will work with, through the BTMI, we will work with those entities with a view to helping them rationalize the proposal and bring it into effect. There are a number of existing programs. Years ago, there was a program or a marketing campaign on Marketing Barbados. It has now been refined into I Am Tourism. It makes it perhaps a little bit more difficult for people to understand, and tourism is our business, let's play our part. But the truth of the matter is, I Am Tourism, if you think it through, sends the message that we want to send philosophically, that every Barbadian should be able to say, he or she is tourism in a direct or indirect way, and you play a role. I'm cognizant of the time, ma'am, but that, in addition to the National Tourism Host Program and things like Dine with a Bajan, where we actually go to people's homes, teach them what the standards we want to have are, and encourage and facilitate a connection between them and the hotels, so that we have people leaving a hotel now, coming to your home, ma'am, to be your guests, and you prepare dinner with them, and they spend a little bit of time assimilating the culture of your community. Those are the kind of projects that we're working with people so as to help build the capacity, and of course they get some money for it in the process.
Thank you very much. House recognizes the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Question again for the Minister. Under program number 332, subprogram 0554 Caves of Barbados, account 316 grants to public institutions, recurrent expenditure. There's a provision for $5.5 million or thereabouts, and under account 416 grant to public institutions, some capital expenditure, I think of maybe another $1 million for Harrison Cave redevelopment project. My question is, what level of profitability is there attaching to the operations of Caves of Barbados? And justify for us, because I'm sure that you can, this continuing level of subvention for a profit-making entity.
As I begin to ask the question, I will invite the CEO of the Caves of Barbados to join me at the table. One of yours. The honourable member would be aware, I am sure, that the Caves of Barbados still is financing a, it was on one of those, the Caves of Barbados is still financing a debt to the, from the central bank, and the outstanding amount of, sorry, Caribbean Development Bank, I beg your pardon, the Caribbean Development Bank, I misspeak, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the outstanding sum of money is now United States dollars 12.1 million. On an annual basis, we are repaying a loan repayment of $5,844,000. But the Cave's operational expenditure is in the vicinity of $6,252,960. So that the Cave actually sees an operational profit in the best possible circumstances of about $516,000. Now, as I said before, this is a national, this is a heritage asset. I think the premier heritage asset of the country. It is beyond any doubt the island's treasure insofar as being an environmental asset is concerned. It must be managed in a way that demonstrates absolute sensitivity to the environmental reality of the cave. It takes over 1,000 years for a stalactite to grow. It takes several thousand years for a stalactite to meet a stalactite. The stalactite coming from the roof, the stalactite growing up. The spectacular physical offering as a tourism product is something that didn't just drop from the sky. And it therefore has to be nurtured and treated in a very special way, and that comes at some considerable expense as well. It is therefore felt, and I suspect that this is the question, where the question is going, it is therefore felt that it is easier for this company to recognize its potential to turn a profit, and at the same time, do the necessary reinvestment of capital that it must do in order to sustain the cave, and at the same time pay the debt, the substantial developmental debt that it has to continue to meet, which said debt, may I add, was incurred because of the fact that it was necessary to make the infrastructure, the visitor infrastructure of the cave more modern. But the fact of the matter is that while that was done in 2005, 2003, somewhere in that vicinity, the reality is that technology has gone apace, and the experience itself still has to be refreshed yet again 15 years later. And for example, if you go to the cave, you would want to be able to have a visual representation of what the product is about in digital form. That aspect of the experience is sorely lacking. If you think in terms of the ability to leave the cave with a commodity in your hand, which is representative of the experience, that aspect of it is sorely lacking. And yet we know that amusement parks around the world, attractions around the world are all doing these kinds of things. They're all incorporating the digital component. They're all incorporating a number of other experience at the retail shop and so on and so forth. So the upgrade, the rehabilitation, the interpretive display in the visitors reception center, all of those are things that we have to be able to finance. And it is felt that it is better for the cave to be able to be placed with a concessionaire that has the necessary commercial experience and the capital to make an investment that will enable us to get where we want to go. Ideally, we would want to do so in a manner that also carries along, as I have said in this honorable chamber before, and I repeat myself today, because as when I said it last time, the honorable leader of the opposition led the tumultuous applause. I believe that it is necessary to do so in a way that takes along the average Barbadian, because I do think that the question raised by the honorable member for St. Thomas was at the core of this thing. As we refresh the cave experience, we must also take along the people who live in Allen View and who live in the surrounding communities, so that they too can be part and parcel of the product to an extent that, quite frankly, they are not, at least not to my satisfaction at this stage. And that means that the cave experience must not just be a drive-through in a parked vehicle, they get out, they go into the cave, come back out, get into a vehicle and disappear. But there must be an opportunity to experience the cave in other dimensions, part of a trail which takes us through the heritage aspect of the country, the eco-adventure aspect of the experience, an after experience of the cave, which then allows there to be dining. Yes, sorry, ma'am. Which then allows there to be dining, beverage, etc., the use of the cave by night. There are a number of variables on this thing that can be done in a way that encapsulates the neighboring communities and enables us, ma'am, at the same time to honor our commitments financially.
Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. I thank the minister for his very fulsome and clear answer. I think today, honestly, he's earning his pay. Emphasis on today. But I thank the honourable minister for the information shared. And he anticipated my follow-up question, because I wanted to ask with respect to plans contemplated with respect to changes possibly in ownership of the operations at the cave, and also whether or not the monies allocated here for redevelopment relate to past project redevelopment or future project redevelopment.
The honourable member, despite his most mischievous approach to the question, has raised an important point. The money, to be blunt, does relate to past commitments. With regard to where we go in the future, sitting on the desk of the CEO of the cave right now is the request for proposals, which will be in the newspaper very shortly. I would have imagined it would have gone there before, but for the fact that it was felt by legal advisors that it was necessary for and not only necessary, but appropriate for the Caribbean Development Bank, which had financed initially up to a tune of $24 million, United States currency, to not discover this matter only in the press, but to have been appropriately informed and brought up to speed. That having now been done, and my permanent secretary would have been party to the discussions that took place fairly recently, we are now in a position, I think, to advance this process. On my own desk is a very extensive cabinet paper, which will go to cabinet, I hope, this week, in a way as to bring cabinet fully into awareness of all of the attendant issues which the ministry would want to direct to cabinet's mind. Obviously, I'm not, before going to cabinet, going to stand here and sit here and discuss all of them, but the fact is, Madam Chair, that it would be most appropriate for us to go into this exercise being ever mindful of as I said, the cultural, environmental, heritage aspects and the requirements for us to treat this not as any ordinary divestment process, but as one which is special and unique, bearing in mind at all times the very precious nature of the entity that we are dealing with.
Any supplementary, honourable member? The House recognizes the honourable member for St. George South.
My question relates to I had sub-program 0599 on the National Tourism Program. And the sub-program statement reads like this: provide for the diversification of the improvement of the Barbados tourism product with an emphasis on cultural heritage. And I will speak or ask a question specifically to Bridgetown and the whole aspect of vending. And when I walk through Bridgetown, I see commerce. And I often say this to the Honorable Minister for Tourism, the member for St. James Central. Bridgetown epitomizes commerce in this country, and I would like to know from the minister or any member of the team whether in building out our heritage and our culture as part of the tourism product, have we factored in the role that vending ought to play in indeed establishing their rightful place in economic development. And indeed, when you look at the markets within Bridgetown, we talk Cheapside Market, Palmetto Square Market, they're zestless. And indeed, when tourists come to this country, the focus is on Broad Street and Cape Shepherd. And we have a wealth of culture. Huskering is just as ingrained in our culture as it's put in South. And indeed, vending is very critical for building out commerce in this country. And my question to the minister is, what role will that play in terms of the tourism product as we seek to commercialize Bridgetown and indeed make it a more attractive place for tourists, and also to maintain our heritage and our culture as it relates to vending? The honourable member is minister responsible, and I think it is most appropriate that he raises this question with respect to how we can build the linkages that Dr. Hall would previously have spoken about, in this case between vending and the tourism sector. Let me begin by saying that philosophically, and I like to start with a philosophical departure because it helps to understand where I feel we should be going, rather than just have a few knee-jerk reactions to questions. This Parliament, ma'am, a couple hundred years ago, this honorable place decided that it was going to pass legislation, and did pass a few pieces of legislation which sought to disempower free blacks by stopping them from vending in Bridgetown. And I firmly believe, ma'am, that a parliament in this day and age must set imbalances right by empowering people to be able to make money and play a role in the country's most lucrative industry, which is the tourism sector. I take that position philosophically. I believe, ma'am, that I've already spoken about the Pelican Craft Village, and I think that I have had the honorable leader of the opposition said that I had a dispute with the governor, or a difference of opinion with the governor of the bank. I think my real difference of opinion was not so much with the governor, but my real difference of opinion was with the Chamber of Commerce. And I have not hidden my views, and I have said, and I still intend to sit and meet with them once I have the opportunity. Because the Chamber of Commerce, at the highest level of commerce in Barbados, and all the way back down to the ordinary vendor who might be in a market somewhere, all have to be able to play a role and recognize the responsibility that they have to participate more effectively in helping to spur economic growth in Barbados. Now, with regard to the Pelican Craft Village, for example, ma'am, I think that that has to be a project. It must be a project that is done in a multiple disciplinary way, so that we bring all the relevant ministries together. Certainly my ministry is only but one of them. The honorable member's ministry is another. The actual landlords, I think, are the Ministry of International Business, BIDC. But we have to be able to work with those persons in order to help them reconceptualize that which they do. Because it is a wrong thing, I think, for them to be bypassed on a daily basis when the Bridgetown port on a daily basis is bringing thousands of people into this country, but they are not seeing any receipts or returns. Now, part of that, I think, is also their fault, but the candid discussion must take place, and we must help them to help themselves. I also believe, ma'am, that the project I have indicated will take place, the vendors market by night, is one where we can bring all vendors in Bridgetown and surrounding areas to a location in the city, but to have vending in a different experience and in a different way. Yes, it will not transform the reality in Pelican Village overnight, but it helps people who are in the vending community to understand and to get an idea of how they themselves, by pooling their resources and their approaches, can make the commercial reality for them better. And I believe if you teach a man to fish, ma'am, you do better than just giving him a fish to eat. I also feel, ma'am, that the market experience the honourable member point, sister, is entirely on point and accurate. I have had some discussions in a very preliminary way with my friend, the honourable member for St. Michael's South, who has responsibility for the fishery sector. And he knows that I feel that the Bridgetown Fish Market is also a potential tourism experience. And why? Because if you go to Europe, people are actually doing cruises through Europe, ma'am, or in rivers, river cruises. And part of what they get off of a cruise ship to do is to visit places like fish markets. And it's not just where you cut up fish then. It is also about the preparation of the fish, the eating, I say restaurant, but the experience, the culinary experience. And we do this. We have in Bay Street a gentleman who has gotten international acclaim by doing cutters. And we get on, ma'am, as though this is not part of the honourable member's constituency. And we get on, ma'am, as though this is not something that we should be celebrating. But I think as we go forward, and certainly this year, much effort will be put into helping Barbadians at that level of the economic scale recognize the role that they can potentially play in spurring economic growth for all of this country. I believe, ma'am, that again, as we talk about the UNESCO World Heritage Property site and the tourist urban route traversing historic Bridgetown, ma'am, that we have to recognize that this is projected to depart the old town hall at Cheapside. And as it meanders through the city, going through St. Mary's Church, the Southern Street area, James Street, Corey Street, Robert Street, Palmetto, Dottins Alley, ma'am, the Exchange Museum, coming all the way back around to Charles Duncan O'Neill Bridge, back into Independence Square, Cavens Lane, the Screw Dock, the Chamberlain Bridge. Along that way, ma'am, there are several persons who make their living by selling a variety of things. And all we have,
please wrap up.
Yes, ma'am. And all we have to do is use a little bit of creativity and imagination. Such a tour by night is an excellent opportunity for persons who have small businesses in rum shops, who have small businesses in food vending, who have small businesses in a range of things that will empower them. And in making this type of approach a reality, ma'am, I think that we transform lives potentially.
Honourable member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Honourable Chamber. I must thank the Minister for eruditely putting before this House and placing before this Honourable Chamber the strategic plans for his ministry, the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. And I am saying, Madam Chair, that albeit from the well of this House, I am saying, and I don't want the Member of Parliament and the Honourable Minister to be a contortionist today and change his head 180 degrees, but I must apologize for speaking from this angle. But certainly he has been twisting and turning our tourism product because it has been in a state, a horrible state of hibernation over the last 10 years. And I want to thank him today for giving us the opportunity to see a vision that will redound to the benefit of every single Barbadian. I also want As Minister of Youth and Community Empowerment, I want to congratulate him today, and I feel very pleased to see the work and the effort being made on community tourism. One of the important tenets of our manifesto is to build Barbados together. And I'm saying it is a move in the right direction, because the only way we can build Barbados together is if communities not only build Barbados together, but if they build our tourism product together. And I want to thank the Member of Parliament and the Minister for his vision and his pellucid explanation as it relates to community tourism. And I want him to go forward with all the sinew of his being. Madam Chair, my question to the Minister, as Minister of Youth, my question to him is, what are the plans, or if there are any projects, for the active participation of our young people to be able to have a tangible stake in our tourism product? And recognizing that it presents an opportunity for employment for our young people. And with the level of antisocial behavior, it is an avenue to reduce that level of youth disengagement. And so I want to ask the Minister, what is his plans for our young people, if there are any special project to engage our young people in the tourism product at either the sea or airport, and how they could be involved in bringing out the best of Barbados using all of our people. Because the one thing we have in this country is the people. I mean, the news are all our people capital to ensure that Barbados becomes a successful story.
I thank the honourable member for his very kind comments and his very pertinent question. Ma'am, the reality of our situation is that I genuinely feel that more robust effort must be made to get persons to understand that which I philosophically, and I go back to philosophy because I think it is important to start there. I keep on saying that. I philosophically believe that the tourism sector cannot be viable and will not sustain itself if it is seen as being an entity built for foreigners, run by foreigners, for foreigners. It has to be seen as being something that is vibrant and real, a lived experience by local people. For that to happen, we must carry with us the youth of this country. Now, specifically, to be fair, there has been a program sponsored by the Caribbean Tourism Organization, for example, which will have, I think, essentially every country has a junior minister of tourism. And you become junior minister of tourism by a competitive framework, and so it stimulates awareness in our schools. But that is just to put a toe in the water. That is just but a first step. I think we have to be a lot more robust in the way in which we do this. It is my view, for example, that the Food and Rum Festival must encapsulate in a greater way the rum and sugar story of this country in a way that enables not just a visit to the hospitality sector, but the encouragement of young people in our schools to understand what it is to be a mixologist, to understand how the history of the sugarcane that they see growing all around this country can translate itself into something qualitatively different in their experience. It is a project that I know that the BTPA has been putting some effort into, and while the minister was asking his question, I asked Mrs. Marsha Allen, who is the acting CEO of the BTPA, to come to the table so that she could share with you some of the developmental views that they have.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, there are a number of youth development programs that the BTPA has been rolling out. And in addition to the Barbados Tourism Youth Congress program that the minister just spoke about, I just want to give you some of the other ones. The I Am Tourism campaign is a campaign that seeks to ensure that every Barbadian understands that they have a role to play within the tourism industry. And what the BTPA has sought to do is not just say, but to also go into the schools, the secondary schools of Barbados. And in 2018, 2017, 2018, we would have actually taken this program to about 25 schools, secondary schools all across Barbados. And we would have actually spoken to them not just about the fact that they have a role to play in tourism, but we found, Madam Chair, that a lot of our youth don't know the history of Barbados. And if you don't know your history, you don't know where you come from, you have no pride in your nation. So in order to ensure that we inculcate pride in our school kids and our children, we wanted to give them the history of Barbados. And so we've halted that program for a little while to ensure the transition happens, but we intend to go full speed ahead in that I Am Tourism program, so every child, every Barbadian understands not just that their role to play within the industry, but the island, and bringing back that sense of pride and that sense of belonging to Barbados. We also have a program called the Barbados Together program, which teaches you basic things like, you know, good mornings, the thank yous, the manners that Barbadians were known for back in the 70s, the 80s, and some of it we've lost. But to bring those things back, and that is one of the reasons why a lot of our repeat guests come to Barbados, because they love the Barbadian people. If you ask the majority repeat guests why they come to the island, they will tell you the people are the most important reason why they come to Barbados. And so we have a vested interest to invest in our people, and starting with the youth of our nation, to ensure that they understand how viable and how important they are to the industry, and how much Barbados depends on them to ensure that they take the industry to the next level. We also have the FCCA competition, which is the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association competition. And last year, Barbados actually emerged the winner of that competition. $3,000 was awarded to the child who won the competition and to our school. But more importantly, Madam Chair, we got the students of this nation to really look at cruise tourism in a completely different way, and to understand their role and how they can actually ensure that they influence cruise tourism. A lot of times we see the cruise ships going by back and forth, but our kids don't have an opportunity not just to tour the Bridgetown Port and tour the cruise ships, but to understand that they can also play a role, and they can see careers within the cruise industry as part of the tourism industry. So we are ensuring that the youth is not forgotten, that we include the youth, and we want to take them along. Another area that I know it's still in development stage is also taking tourism to the schools holistically, not just the secondary schools, but to the primary level, even the infants level, so that we can't be a nation that's saying that we are a tourism-dependent nation and not telling our kids about tourism. And those are some of the areas in which we want to develop tourism, so that we bring our people along holistically.
Supplementary, Honourable Member.
Just a follow-up from the question. I want to know if there are any, or how practical it is for us to have these young people sell either their products or the arts or products, or be part of the creative experience at either the seaport or the airport. That's the question really that I would like to answer.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I did not hear the
I did not hear either. Could you repeat, Honourable Member?
I wanted to know if, or what are the plans, if there are any, to have our young people at the ports of entries in order to sell their products or their services. That's the question. If there are any plans to have them in a physical way at the port of our entries.
The honourable member is raising a very interesting and important point. The truth is that already, as we speak, for example, when visitors arrive here, the Barbados Tourism Product Authority is utilizing the skills of some of our young people who might be studying languages, for example, to assist in the welcome experience, so that they function in an interpretive capacity at the airport, and I believe also at the seaport at this stage. Right now, the welcome experience at the airport has been enhanced, as many of you would either have experienced or heard, by utilizing the skills of some of our young people who are studying hospitality. and they will be up there on a shift basis, rotational basis, meeting and greeting or participating in the meet and greet experience, so that, for example, if you are studying food and bev or bartending, waitressing, etc., at the hospitality school, you're participating also now at the airport as part of the time that you put in a practical way with the meet and greet, where we are offering visitors drinks and essentially trying to create a different ambiance for the arrival in the country. There will obviously have to be further thought given to the way in which we can incorporate. I do know that on almost every one of the hospitality institutions, whether it be hotels, the airport, the seaport, take on young people as a routine thing, internship process during the summer vacation. So again, that gives another percentage an opportunity to participate by way of workplace experience and to make a little bit of extra money. But we have to continue to give thought as to how we can further incorporate our young people into the hospitality sector before they reach adulthood.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Minister, as part of your strategic goals, you mentioned that you want to expand and upgrade the airport facilities while promoting a safe environment. The last part of it really has me a bit concerned. It says, I'm fulfilling all local and international security requirements and obligations. Minister, when I read that, it speaks to me that there's a lot that you have to do as a new minister in this position for less than a year. Could you, understanding that this is a security problem, could you speak in broad terms as to what are these local and international security requirements and obligations that we need now to fulfill?
Honourable Member, let me begin by prefacing my remarks this way. The airport is a national security installation, and though I will endeavor to answer your question, I cannot answer your question in a fulsome manner from this position, because that would be eminently unwise. But if your concern is the question of security, then I think that we can safely say that the airport, like any other airport, will from time to time be audited by the International Civil Aviation Organization and also by the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Authority. And as you probably would have heard, from time to time recommendations are made as to improvements which are necessary. My concern is that there needs to be a greater degree of alacrity or speed with the implementation of those improvements. I think, quite frankly, that there are some basic things that we must be able to deal with above and beyond just threats to aircraft, however, but we must also be able to speak to the way in which our security arrangements at the airport more satisfactorily look after Barbadians as well. And inasmuch as that is not a national security issue in a major sense, I could feel free to speak more fulsomely to that. We have, for example, a phenomena which has crept into the existence of the airport called taxi snatchers, where people will, without authorization, appear on the premises of the airport, passing themselves off as taxi men, unknown to anybody who they are, who authorized them to be there. None of these questions can be answered, but they manage to take innocent people arriving in this country, get them into a motor car, extract from them a fee, very often out of all proportion to what the authorized taxi operators are charging, and take them to a destination. That sometimes has not always ended well. The reality is that that has to be brought to a halt. I have met with the airport taxi operators. I have met with management. Mr. Boxell, the CEO of the airport, is seated to my right. He was present in the meetings. And we have agreed to put in place a number of remedial measures. Signage is one of them. Secondly, we are going to do some physical restructuring of the exit of the airport arrivals hall so that a channel will be created which will direct people leaving the airport into the presence of a dispatcher who will then connect that visitor to an authorized taxi operator so that the opportunity for a snatcher is removed, because you don't get into the arms or the area where a snatcher would be, because the connectivity to the taxi operator is done while you're still within the channel taking you out of the airport arrivals hall. We can also better facilitate a number of other things that need to be done, including the relocation of some of the meet and greet people into that channel at the same time as well. Another aspect of this, of course, has got to be the public relations, so that we make people understand what is happening and how we are taking steps to correct it. Part of my meetings have also included the police, quite frankly, because I wanted to get their take on the situation, and I think we have settled that there is going to be a process of retraining airport security workers so that they are certain about what their rights in the circumstances are, what powers they have, what powers they do not have. And above and beyond all of that, we need to enforce the law. The airport CEO, I believe, has the power once we've gone through the court, or sorry, the court has the power once the process has been conducted to prevent or prohibit someone from the use of the facility. And we have been very reluctant to take that type of step. But I believe that you have to make an example of a few people who are intent on lawlessness, and therefore, if it means that you have to prohibit them from the use of the facility, then so be it. The reality is that if that's what the law provides for, then those are the steps that we can take. But what cannot be tolerated is that you have all and sundry going up there, passing themselves off as being legitimate operators of ground transportation services without paying any fee to use the facility, as the legitimate operators must do, and to go along with people's little children and innocent passengers, and then expose the jurisdiction to very negative comment down the road.
Any supplementary?
Just one. I would direct this to the CEO, though. You haven't been there for a much longer time than the minister itself. What would you say would have been the major problem in not having these things addressed before?
Tap it again. The right hand. There you go.
Okay, so these are problems which have been addressed in various ways before. We've stepped up the prevalence of airport security. We've been working with the Royal Barbados Police Force in order to help prevent prevent the issues with the snatchers. We try to make the taxi dispatchers more prominent so that passengers, when they are exiting the airport, see the taxi dispatchers. Those measures may have helped reduce the prevalence of taxi snatchers, but not to a level that we are satisfied. And it certainly has not eliminated it in its entirety. So for that reason, as the minister said, we're now moving to a system where we are going to be creating a greater separation between those persons who will be meeting family and friends, and those persons who intend to take a taxi away from the airport, as well as preventing people from parking on the periphery of the airport, etc., which is where majority of the taxi snatchers will park and then walk across the car park with the guests. So it has been a step process that we have been doing. We have been taking measures, assessing how they have been working, and then formulating additional activities to be done. Thanks.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, one of the things I would want to put on the table is that we have 3 locations in St. John that are ripe for this community tourism, Martins Bay, Bath, and Quadrington College, so I would hope that that is factored into the process. I know that the last government refused to embrace the female cricket competition. I think it was the World Cup. We have just invested in the England tour. And my question is, to date, I know we still have some matches coming. Would you say that we have had the necessary benefits as a result of that investment to date of the Indian tour?
Honourable Member, let me start first of all with your constituency question, because I think it is a useful one. Quadrington College has been a site which is worthy which has been a tourism attraction now from as far back as I can recall, and it is worth, in my view, attention for further development. And I know that you are very strong in the community organization business, and I urge you to use that considerable experience to help you in that regard. Martins Bay as well, I take your point. It is, again, these experiences tend to grow up from the community very naturally and instinctively in some cases. And when you see that happening, I think it is important to harness that and to try to shape it so that it can maximize its fullest potential. And that is one of the areas where I must tell you, I see the evidence of increasing tendency towards people being interested in participating and therefore generating that spend that we want them to generate, because they come into the community, they're curious about what it is about, they want to sample the experience, as you heard Dr. Hall say, they want to become immersed in it, and then the rest really is natural. You leave a little change in the community. With regard to the cricket, during the test match, it would have been impossible to find an empty hotel room in Barbados. And I think that that answers the question. We have approximately 6,500 hotel rooms, and indeed on the last night of the test match there were 2 flights headed to London which broke down at Grantley Adams International Airport, and we would have therefore had approximately 500 people who needed to have accommodation. And the truth of the matter was the struggle was to find a place for them. Many of them had, unfortunately, to sleep at the airport because, in fact, the vast majority, we managed to get that facility that Virgin Atlantic has in Bay Street to accommodate a few, but the vast majority had to spend the night at the airport just because there was no room in Barbados. It is a problem, though, that points us in another direction, which takes us to the discussion about room stock. We do have to continue, and we've been talking about the investments, we do have to continue to redouble our efforts to expand the amount of rooms that we have in the country. And as I said to you, the difficulty we have is that the rest of the Caribbean has been paying a lot of attention to expanding their room stock, and we must keep pace in order to continue to be competitive. But again, all indications are that the one-day internationals this week, from all that I gather is taking place around Barbados, will be equally capable or are equally capable of driving a large amount of visitor traffic and consequential visitor spend. I am aware that there are a number of facilities in the St. James area. That's where I pay the closest attention for understandable reasons. But there are a number of facilities in the St. James area, especially in Old Town area yesterday, that were absolutely jam-packed with tourists. So I know that there are a lot of people in town, and I get the impression that the hotels are in a very similar situation to what they were in a couple of weeks ago during the test match. But, you know, again, there's a linkage. Sports must be linked to tourism, and tourism linked to sports. And we mustn't only see this as able to be done with cricket. It can be done with masters football. There's a new thing, well, not new really, but you hear, for example, Mr. Brian Talma talking about it all the time, and he's 100% right. And I'm indebted to him for putting it out there. This concept of beach culture, where everything that is happening by way of sports is now happening on the beaches. And we have an island surrounded by water and some of the most lovely beaches that you could want to experience. But we must also play some football on the beach competitively and play some volleyball on the beach competitively. And there are people moving around the world spending a lot of money to participate in tournaments that are water related. There is, for example, a major powerboat, what we call jet ski powerboat competition that takes place in Fort Lauderdale and in Miami, and they like to host it in Barbados. These types of linkages, as the Honorable Minister of Sports is aware, are things that we are working on. Rome was not built in a day, but I want to assure you, Madam Chair, that these are part of the deliverables I believe that we can achieve during the course of the next few months.
Honourable Member, if I may speak for St. John, he asked you specifically about women's cricket. I haven't heard you mention it yet.
Oh, he said, ma'am, I listened to him very carefully. He said that the last administration did not express any interest in supporting women's cricket, which is true, and they were characteristically short-sighted, and I think that is the reason why the people of this country rejected them in such overwhelming numbers, because neither did they understand the need to be supportive of women in particular, nor did they understand the importance of cricket in general.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. George North.
First of all, I would like to compliment the Minister and his team, very experienced team, and the very first time in 24 years that I have heard a Minister and his team so explanatory, and the very first time that we have had full disclosure of the ministry, and I want to thank the Minister who have opened the baton for us today. I want to follow up on a number of issues because I think it was Dr. Hall mentioned the fact that tourism is our business. Let's all play a part. How do we sensitize Barbadians to do much more? In recent times, especially in the month of January, I was in Toronto, and some of the Bajans keep asking us what is happening to crime in our place. And I wonder if the Ministry of Tourism have a program in place to work with the police, to work with the youth, and to work with all sorts of agencies to ensure that crime and the level of crime becomes limited to what it is, or limited to what it is now. I also want to ask if you talk about a program for encouraging Barbadians here next year, and you talk about the various parishes having a month or a day or whatever. I wonder if you could explain on this so that the public can be sensitized into knowing that this is a good program, and how are you going to encourage Barbadians abroad? What methods are you going to use? For example, I noticed that when your marketing team, that again, in North America, we hear a number of countries using CNN and using the media to encourage the locals to their country. What are we doing in terms of marketing strategy to encourage the widest set of Barbadians to come home, because it's a good experience? And what programs are you putting in place to ensure that this experience is first class? Thank you.
Honourable Member, with respect to your first question about crime, I am not going to just dodge the ball. I would like you to hear a response, but I will invite Dr. Hall to speak to that matter in the context of the core brand elements for Barbados. I am advised, and I think properly so, that the awkward thing about a minister of tourism speaking to the question of crime is that while the Attorney General can speak the truth, and I could share his view 100% as I do, it perhaps ought not to fall from my lips because it is seen as the person who's in charge of the marketing of the destination saying certain things that ought not to be put out there. And I understand that point. So I treat all those things you have heard from the Prime Minister and the Attorney General as though they were my own opinion, which they really are, and I need not go further there from that. I want to speak, though, to the regathering program. The regathering concept is a concept articulated by the Prime Minister with a view to doing a number of things. I think most important of all of the intended objectives is that it helps Barbadians play a role in spurring economic activity in Barbados at a time when the country badly needs that economic activity. Obviously, from a tourism perspective, Barbadians living abroad, and we are now looking to take this thing globally. Barbadians living abroad are being invited to come home. Friends of Barbados are being invited to come home. And we do this across the length of next year. That should be seen as an additive to, not a replacement of, but in addition to our ordinary tourism activity. So that we have already, for example, spoken to airlines in Canada, WestJet and Air Canada in particular, with a view to alerting them to the intended activity so that they can make the necessary accommodation in terms of flights and so on to be able to help us to transport the over 30,000 Barbadians who now reside in Canada. Similarly, when we go to the continental United States, we have similar numbers, perhaps larger. And again, what we are trying to do is across the year, the 12 months of the year, have those persons come home. Same principle applies in the United Kingdom. So that we begin by working with the airlines and trying to put them in a position where they are in the know and the necessary adjustments can be made, because as you know, it doesn't matter whether you're selling bread or whether you're selling flights on the airline. Once you know there's an opportunity to make some money, you are going to go there. Secondly, we have the use of the consulates. Barbados has consular offices, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and indeed through the BTMI, we too have our offices. And what we will be doing is putting into the marketplace the notice that Barbados is having this special year of activity and that we are targeting Barbadians in a touristic way. And we will be encouraging them not just to come home, but to come home and experience Barbados from the perspective of a tourist, which means that you come and spend a little bit of time in a hotel or in a guest house. And that means that the diversification effort that we have been trying to do, where we build out, for example, an Airbnb or shared accommodation sector, more appropriately put, that diversity in the product offering, where people's homes are also part of a pool of accommodation, can now also help Barbadians to make a little bit of money through that process. And needless to say, once they are in Barbados, then as Dr. Hall has already told you, our intention is to have them in the communities and participating in our festival activities and participating in our sporting activities and so on, and that stimulates further economic activity. And while here, we would also want them to be looking at opportunities where they can spend some of their resources, their experience, their technical know-how on the country's well-being, so that we can then have business opportunities, tangible business opportunities growing up and developing, so that we could get some commercial startups, some partnerships being developed between themselves and Barbados, so that the country as a whole can start to see economic growth. Because the more economic growth we can generate, then the faster we can get out of an arrangement with the International Monetary Fund. And please, the Leader of the Opposition, who is genuinely concerned about the well-being of the country. I would like Dr. Hall to speak to the other question.
Thank you, Minister, Madam Chair. We have heard this issue brought up several times today, and quite rightfully so. The concern is well justified from the perspective of the whole issue of safety and security in Barbados and the impact it will have on the tourism industry, the debilitating impact. Barbados's tourism industry has been based on core brand elements, which have been friendliness, cleanliness, safety, and security. And while they have nothing to do necessarily with product development or marketing initiatives, these three core brand elements form the very foundation that have been the success of the tourism industry for decades. Barbadians have always been deemed for over 300 years of being a welcoming society. We've always had the reputation of being the healthiest, safest, and most socially agreeable island in the British West Indies, and I'm talking from back in the 17th and 18th century. And that was the very foundation that the early tourism industry was built. The whole issue of cleanliness, of course, safeguarding our environment, not just for tourism, but for Barbadians first, and of course for future generations. That is also a critical area. A nasty country is not a healthy country. It denotes lack of pride in oneself, and it sends a bad message to the world. So that is an area that we have to definitely focus on. And the whole issue, of course, is safety and security. So once we find that those three areas are under threat, that is threatening the very existence of the goose, as I said earlier, that's laying the golden egg. So as we seek to come up with phenomenal marketing strategies and great tourist attractions and things to do, we first have to focus on those three core brand elements which form the very foundation of the house we call tourism. The reason why safety and security is so important is because in Barbados, we don't do something called enclave tourism. You find that 7 islands like Jamaica and Dominican Republic, they have big 4,000-room hotels. They put big walls around these hotels, and the visitors pretty much stay inside, and they're bussed in and out. In Barbados, we have much smaller, in many cases, boutique-sized hotels. Our visitors leisurely walk up to the front road, hop on the first reggae bus to come down the street, and they head off to our supermarkets, to Bridgetown. You see them hanging out in our rum shops. You go anywhere in Barbados and you will see a visitor. They feel free and they feel safe. They tell us they feel safe. And a brand perception study that was done in Barbados in 2007 actually said the reason why they're able to relax is because they feel safe and the people are friendly. So the combination of safety and friendly translates into a relaxing environment in Barbados. So this is something that we have, even though it doesn't fall under the purview for the perspective of cleanliness, which is the environment, safety and security. Tourism has a vested interest, and we have to be very involved in what happens in these areas from a touristic perspective. Yes, as I said, it's not just about tourists. We want Barbados to be friendly, safe, and clean for Barbadians first, and then tourism will benefit. But we have to be honest here and due to the fact that tourism is our major foreign exchange earner, and we rely on visitors to come to Barbados to enable us to sustain the quality of life of all Barbadians. We definitely, if we are inviting people into our house, we would like to ensure that they're coming to a welcoming society, a clean nation, and a safe nation. Just like if we are traveling overseas, we want the same things for ourselves. So the thing is, though, this is where community tourism is going to come into play. And community tourism is not necessarily a niche area like other niches. Community and tourism are about people. So really, when you talk community tourism, you could use the terms interchangeably. When we are able to involve the Barbadian people in a way that's unprecedented and engage them and create a space where they're able to benefit from the prosperity that tourism brings, they will help us to protect and nurture this industry called tourism. That is why it's so important for us to ensure there's a greater spatial balance between tourism on the coastlines with the beaches, which is what our model has proliferated for the tourism model for years, and one where now we create that spatial balance where we create tourism in the rural areas, and we get out there into the communities to ensure that tourism dollar spreads across this entire nation, and a wider cross-section of Barbadian society and communities are able to benefit from the tourism dollar or from the visitor economy. So just in line with what the Minister says, this is why I know we've started some community programs already. We went into St. Lucie and had a heritage and culinary festival. And I did speak to the representative there and said, these are the types of things where we have to spread this across the country, this model of not just festivals. There are a lot of Barbadians and communities that are just looking for their opportunity to be able to, whatever it is, a lot of our Barbadians are talented. It may be in the form of entertainment, it may be forms of arts and crafts, it may be culinary, but whatever it is, we have to be able to create that space through a comprehensive community tourism program, which has commenced already, to give them the opportunity to help us to resurrect this economy and to bring the necessary economic and social transformation that is required at this time.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to congratulate the Minister and his team for a good job so far. Especially knowing the Minister in another life, being the one to be asking questions, it's nice to be in a position to question him. And with that being said, tourism is our business, and we all need to play our part. And I can honestly say that we have a few beaches that are underutilized, and I can mention Brandon's Beach and Bats Rock Beach, both situated in my constituency. And I can honestly say that tourists don't only travel to Barbados to enjoy sun, sea, and sand, but also to enjoy and experience real Bajan culture. And through the community tourism, I would like to know how possible it will be to establish kiosks on those beaches that entrepreneurs can utilize and help, like you said earlier, get a piece of the pie, because we have entrepreneurs that would be happy to embrace such an opportunity, because plenty of my constituents approached me already asking me if I cannot have kiosks established on Brandon's Beach, especially for those that are looking for ways to generate income. So I just want to know how possible it will be to have something like that established through the community tourism program.
I think the honourable member is on to a very useful idea. Now let me start by saying, just for the purposes of absolute clarity, that the Ministry of Tourism could not make that happen, because that really is the purview of a different department of government, more specifically the National Conservation Commission. But I think that the minister responsible would be hearing you, and I also believe that a discussion between ourselves can assist us in trying to make an initiative like that happen. Now, I'm happy to embrace it as an excellent idea, and I will tell you why. Not just to please you, but it pleases me as well, honorable member, because of the fact that I just talked about a thing called beach culture. And while Mr. Talma, who would have put the concept in my head, and I acknowledge that, would have had in his mind largely the activities that are taking place in Christchurch, especially of a surfing type nature. The truth of the matter is that if we are talking about bringing sports to the beaches of Barbados, Brandon's is already doing that. Volleyball competitions have been taking place there. Beach football competitions taking place there. My permanent secretary would tell you that she and I had to attend a tourism ministers meeting in the Bahamas last year, and I was absolutely blown away by the sight of a massive stadium complete with floodlights on a beach in the Bahamas, And when inquiring what it is all about, that is where they host international competitions in beach soccer. And they are bringing teams from the United States of America there for competitive purposes. And we have to understand that this is an evolving multi-million-dollar process where sports is merged with tourism, and you're using some of the best beaches in the world because of the fact that the beach activity lends itself obviously to other things, recreation, and after the games are over, the nighttime experiences, so the after parties and that kind of thing. And you then take yourself out of that box that Barbados has traditionally put itself in, and every minister who came before me, quite frankly, is guilty of this, Madam Chairman, that we have boxed ourselves into seeing this country as a country that is really tourism-oriented for 6 months. But if you're going to flatline that, get away from the peak and the trough, then what we have to do is to make sure that we flesh out the summer season. And part of the summer season experience can easily be sports. Remember that our summer is the winter time in South America. Remember that around the world, people are spending more money than ever before on sports. This year, people are moving around the world, especially in pursuit of health and wellness activity. And all of that fits neatly into the use of our beaches. And above and beyond all of that, as I close, Madam Chair, I ask the honourable member to remember that Barbados created a thing called road tennis. And there's no good reason why that too cannot be done by way of the creation of a little hard court space on a beach in Barbados. And there was a time growing up when all of us know playing beach cricket. And these are the things that we can revive and vitalize so as to make them commercial activities that enable our communities to participate. Because it is in our community that you can find the road tennis. You will not find the road tennis in the heights and terraces of Barbados. But if we empower the people who are keeping those sports and those activities alive, then I think we again help tourism be that tool that enables a spurt of economic growth to come from the belly of the society of the country.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, I want to follow on from your earlier answer in which you went on at some length, not realizing that we all wanted lunch. And you did say that oystins falls within the consideration of the IDB $20 million US funding. And I want to say to you, Minister, and I'm going to speak plainly and bluntly, and to say to you that you have gladdened the hearts of those who live, work, and recreate in Oistins, and we are very grateful. I also want to give you the assurance, in coming to the question, that the committee that you asked for already exists, and that Oistins Redevelopment Committee, if I sound as if I'm boasting on behalf of Oistins, I am, that Oistins Redevelopment Committee is concerning itself with that corridor stretching from the area next to the police station down to the boatyard. And when you come to the Oistins Festival in April, you will see a brand new boatyard which that committee has cooperated with the Ministry of Fisheries in having cleaned. And I believe it was cleaned this week by the fisher folk who live in Oistins. And to the question though, that we want your further assurance now that having met with the operators in the Dover kiosk, we met with them sometime last year, and I'm due for another meeting with them. I want the ministry's assurance that the good treatment given to Oistins by your ministry will also extend to those persons in the St. Lawrence Dover area, and that is my that is the assurance I seek by way of a question.
I want, Madam Chair, to confirm that I have just been assured by Mrs. Aline, who sits to my right, that it is in fact true that the honourable member has done the homework that I assigned to him and has helped to put together that committee. And having therefore passed the first test, I will now do my part in trying to assist him further. To be frank though, ma'am, again, for a number of very good reasons, above and beyond the natural instinct I have to try to assist colleagues, the Dover-St. Lawrence experience is already fit and ripe, in my judgment, for more touristic activity. We know that cricket and football is played there at a competitive level and has historically been an experience which brings teams from overseas on that playing field. We also know, I just spoke about the beach culture experience, and we also know that that is one of the places actually where you already have a hard court right across the road from the beach. You already have a number of people having competitions there, and there's a substantial amount of water sports activity already taking place on that beach. I'm very familiar with that beach, Madam Chair. In my youth, I used to frequent it by day and not necessarily at any other time. But the fact of the matter is, Madam Chair, that yes, I think it is a very easy fit into what we're talking about. And may I also say, for the benefit of the honourable member, that there's a component of this that we have not yet spoken to in this House. The honourable member for St. Michael's South is working assiduously towards making sure that the west coast and the south coast of this island benefit from the creation of jetties, which will facilitate, for the very first time ever, a new opportunity for commercial activity and a new tourism experience, and indeed a new experience for Barbadians as well, which is transportation along the coast of this country from Spikestown to Oistins. Now, along the way, we are going to have to put stops. And it seems to me that whether it is at Dover or somewhere nearby, that too lends itself to the experience. The reason why I feel strongly that St. Lawrence is a good fit for that is because we can't, on one hand, speak the language of entertainment in St. Lawrence, even at the level of a manifesto of the party, as we have done, and not explore every opportunity to make sure that that entertainment experience can be enhanced. And obviously a maritime component to the entertainment experience, especially in evenings where in that strip you have so much dinner facilities and liming facilities and so on, that I think would be an excellent fit. Now, obviously there are other technical issues that would have to be looked at, whether coastal zone management can approve it and so on and so forth. But the point is, ma'am, that as we plan it out, I think that the revitalization of St. Lawrence Gap is a must, and that taking to St. Lawrence Gap the same degree of priority and emphasis that we have placed in other places like Oistins is a natural corollary to what we are talking about, and it certainly has my support, honourable member.
You may.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, Minister. And to add, you referred to the sporting activities that occur in Dover, and I'm glad that your ministry has taken notice of those activities in the hard courts right next to the kiosks, and we're happy that you're treating that as an integrated activity. I would say to you, I would pause and say to you that they have some tournament up there called the Ralph Thorne Road Tennis, and they've played that for about 2 years. So Member for St. Thomas is preventing me from seeing you, Minister. And I'm not allowed to stand. But to say to you that we want Dover to be a lot more active, and I want to say to you that the discussions I've had with them are looking at reviving some kind of a festival in that area. That area misses so badly
the Conga Line Festival that occurred there some 25 years ago, I think it is, yes. But in fairness to your ministry, there's a third area of Christchurch South, and I speak on behalf of Christchurch South. I'm not interested in St. Lucie today. The Graham Hall Sanctuary. Some short time ago, in the company of the Minister of Health, we visited that area to look at the regeneration of the swamp. And that ministry has done some amazing work. You know that that swamp had become transfigured into a sewage dump. That is no longer so, Minister. It is now an area that the swamp now has fish again. The animal population generally has returned to the area. And we have had discussions with the residents in the area. And the work should not stop there, Minister. We envision that area as a nature sanctuary, equipped with benches, and perhaps I heard some of my colleagues calling for kiosks, but it is an area that has great potential in terms of a tourism product, and not only tourism, for Barbadians as well. But I want to appeal to you on behalf of the persons who live and perhaps wish to work in that area, and the hotels which are adjacent to the area, to consider this as a potential area for tourism investment. And I know that you have not visited the area with me as yet. The visit that was to be done there last week in the company of one of your officials was suspended, postponed, only because of this activity. And we're absolutely sure that your officials will do that visit after this activity finishes. But I want your assurance, and I ask you the question, you delegate as you see fit. I want the ministry's assurance that that area will progress as we envision. I'm obliged to you, sir.
The honourable member began, ma'am, his contribution on that supplementary question by reference to the return of a Conga line. I must confess, ma'am, I thought it had started back. I seem to recall seeing the honourable member's predecessor and another gentleman dancing on a sewage-laden beach. If that is not, if that is a different attraction, if that was a different activity, then I apologize to the honourable member for misconstruing. But having said that, ma'am, I see tremendous value in returning to that type of activity. And as I said, this is really about linkages. I could not, as Minister of Tourism, just sit here and simply say, yes, it shall happen. I think it is a matter that must now, again, be discussed within the context of the National Cultural Foundation and the minister they're responsible for that. I think it is also a matter that, again, must be discussed within the context of what is happening in the community and the willingness and readiness of the people in the community to help give it life. But certainly, wherever it is possible, then I think the Ministry of Tourism would stand willing, ready, and able to support you. Let me remind the honourable member that it is part of our manifesto commitment that we want to flesh out a calendar of activities across Barbados, so that week by week we plan to add to those activities. And it therefore helps us to be able to continue to have a menu of options for people who are visiting the island, so that they can say, well, in April there is a Conga line in St. Lawrence Gap, and a little later on in April, if Easter falls in April, there is the Oysters Festival just up the road, and something else in early May, and so on and so forth. With respect to Graham Hall, the honourable member has not recognized yet, but my permanent secretary, who sits to my left, will tell you that I am relentless and I want to know everything. So I was aware before the honourable member told me that there was a planned activity at Graham Hall. In fact, Cabinet was made aware by the honourable member for Christchurch East, who briefs us every week as to the state of affairs on the South Coast. But independently of that, I got a briefing from Mrs. Aline, who sits to my right, and I know that she's supposed to meet with you this week, honourable member, within a couple of days, in Graham Hall so that she can have a benefit of a first-hand knowledge of that to which you are speaking and proposing. Once she is satisfied that it is a serious and useful proposal, then I give you the undertaking that, as I did in Oistins, I will come and I will spend some time with you working on the advancement of it. Because if we can add, what essentially it would be is an eco-tourism, eco-adventure type product, and we want, again, to offer diversity in the product offering to visitors.
One under the rules. Thank you so much. I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, and just to say, and to you, Madam Chair, as well, and to you, Minister, and your wonderful team, you may know that the Oistins Festival is set to go in April. We want to invite you and your wonderful team there, and I would not complete this presentation unless I pause, Mr. Minister, and pay tribute to the person who started this festival way back in 1977, Stella Lady St. John. I think Oistins and Christchurch and Barbados owe that lady more than, we owe her a lot for this festival. This festival has sustained the vibrancy of Southern Barbados over 40 years. And she and Mr. Herbie Earwood, they've now passed the mantle on to younger minds and more energetic bodies. And I want to invite you, Minister, and your wonderful team that came here today and performed so remarkably well. I want to invite you to that activity in April at Easter weekend. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member, I would want to say that I'd be happy to participate and also to echo your sentiments about Stella Lady St. John and indeed her dearly departed husband, whose seat in Parliament you now have the privilege and honour of occupying. And I am sure that as he looks down on you and experiences your passion for representation of the people, as you have so eloquently and ably demonstrated today, he would feel pride about the successor path that has followed him.
And the Leader of the Opposition, recognize you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Minister, on the program 332, subprogram 0350, Small Hotels of Barbados. Grants to nonprofit organizations. There is a provision for $250,000. That's the provision for this year. That was a provision for last year. Is a provision slated for next year and the year thereafter. A question, on what basis is this seeming small amount considered to be reasonable? And could you give us an idea of how the ownership of the small hotel sector in Barbados is profiled? We're not asking for names, it's a profile. And specifically, how are these hotels targeted? How do they qualify for part of this subvention?
I think the honourable member, if he casts his mind back, would remember that in the last administration, one of the very many casualties of mismanagement would have been the small hotel sector, and that there came a point of time around 2012 or 2013, I believe, where no subvention would have been made at all. The number was in fact cut. I think it may have gone, I speak subject to correction because I don't have the figures immediately with me, but may have dropped as much as to 50,000 at one point, but I say that subject to correction. The point is, though, that the small hotels properly characterized as the intimate hotels of Barbados would be those with a room stock of less than 75, and obviously falling within a price point which is substantially lower than, say, for example, what you might find on the West Coast. I don't have the exact price point at my fingertips. But those boutique hotels, and they offer a very special type of service because of the fact that there are major contributors to the hotel sector, in the sense that you will have an experience at the small hotels, so-called intimate hotels, which is genuinely that. It is very often an intimate experience. Because you may have 30-odd rooms, the staff get to know the visitor by name. They get to build personal relationships with the visitor in a way that they become almost friends, as opposed to a commercial type of relationship. We also have found that there's a pattern within the intimate hotels where I think they may have the most significant amount of repeat visitors and the longest stay as well. So and obviously every night spent in a hotel contributes to the spend, and therefore they are significant contributors to the Barbados economy. Now, I want the honourable member to bear with me, because I genuinely want to make the country aware of a few things. With the BTMIs coming into existence, I have, or in anticipation of its coming into existence, I have had a series of meetings with the intimate hotels. I met with their board of management, board directors, and I have asked them to go back to all 600, I believe, of their members, and to come back to me with a response on a number of proposals that I have put to them. First of all, I want, because they are so important to the economy, I want for the BTMI to be able to ring-fence them. And in that way, above and beyond a $250,000 transfer, which right now is basically on the, for the purposes of marketing assistance, or administrative assistance, what we want to be able to do is to transfer, to ring-fence them and assist them in the day-by-day and month-by-month development and marketing of their product. So, specifically, you brand them as a special part of Destination Barbados's offering and experience. Secondly, for the purposes of their procurement, their purchasing of things, we can be of assistance to them if they are branded and treated as a unit, because with what might be 600 odd rooms or 1,000 rooms across the hotels, the group of them, you will be in a position to buy your linen, you'll be in a position to buy your cutlery, you'll be in a position to buy most of your inputs at a cheaper rate because you buy it in bulk, in the same way that a large hotel chain can do that. And obviously you just put the brand on it, Intimate Hotels. There's another advantage for them, because the BTMI would then be in a position for them to occupy as a brand a special place on the marketing, or in the marketing structure of that which the BTMI does, especially in a digital marketing environment. So you go online and you're looking at marketing of Destination Barbados, and you are taken to a component of that site which is about the intimate hotels. And then you can check through the list of the intimate hotels what type of experience you're looking for. You may, for example, want a hotel which is located in an entertainment area like St. Lawrence Gap. And if that is the case, then there will be a few there that you can choose from. On the other hand, you may want an intimate hotel experience which is located more inland, away from the hustle and bustle of the St. Lawrence Gap environment, and offering an entirely different type of experience, and you can checklist that type of hotel. You may want a South Coast or West Coast experience. So that there are categories within that I believe we are better able to help them market if we assist them as a collective under a brand. Above and beyond all of that, we also have to recognize that those approaches help us to come to building niches. And it is very important for Barbados to pay close attention to the opportunities we have to expand our niche tourism experience. I want to say that they have won a number of awards recently for the highest standards of customer satisfaction. Without naming any particular one of them, there is one which has really stood out and won a worldwide award. So it is a valuable part of the product. As recently as 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of opening a refurbished one of those products, where $6 million was put into the exercise of refurbishment of a hotel that carries 33 rooms. But it is now a state-of-the-art product, which is not easily now.
Could you wrap up?
Sorry, easily now surpasses a 3-star, but could probably rise to a 4-star or thereabouts. So that, again, there's a variety of benefits from the intimate hotel experience. And I think, ma'am, that right now I'm in the happy position, unprecedented, I think, for ministers of tourism, where I'm waiting on them to get their act together and come back to me so that I can help them, rather than them being out there waiting for the minister to get around to them. I don't know if I could be of other assistance.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. That's one of the best responses you've given for the day. It would appear to me that the minister is not only earning his pay for today, but will earn his pay for tomorrow as well.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Madam Chair, I'm on the heavy matters from the Leader of Government Business, so I'm going to make my intervention very, very brief. Honourable Minister, I understand that the tourism sector is responsible for the consumption of about 15% of the electricity in Barbados. As you know, we are trying to go to 100% renewable energy by 2030. And it is not just the renewable energy part of it, but it's also, we have concerns about water and water consumption. So I would hope and trust that the BTMI and the Ministry of Tourism is going to lean on its members and those under its umbrella to ensure that all new plant, all renovations, all new constructions are built, undertaken with efficiency, energy efficiency, and renewable energy being the watchwords there. For example, I do not believe that in the tourism sector that there should be any toilets as of now that are not water-saving toilets. All of the faucets in the tourism sector should be going to water-saving faucets. I do believe that every new hotel or every renovation should include some contribution towards making yourself self-sustainable with respect to renewable energy. The hotels have lots of space on their roofs, and I think you should use some of that space for solar PV if you don't intend to use it within your own plant. There are many companies in Barbados, like Water Authority, the BDOC, and other companies who are interested in renting roof space. So I just ask you, going forward, that you look at these. Also, Minister, you know the problems we've been having on the South Coast and with Bridgetown. I would like you to urge your members to come up to scratch with respect to their sewage treatment operations and with respect to their grease traps, because one of the major issues we've been having is with commercial entities on the coast, and these commercial entities include hotels and those in the tourism sector. So it is a heavy burden I'm putting on you. I don't see, let me link it back to the estimates. I don't see anything that would suggest that there's a comprehensive plan to deal with that, but I am just asking that you work it in wherever you can. That is part one. Part two is, I think it is incumbent upon the ministry. We had an unfortunate situation last week. I'm not attempting to put blame on anybody, where there was a widely circulated video showing an altercation that did not reflect well on Barbados. Now, we in Barbados need to understand that tourism is our business, let's play our part is not just a slogan to put on an ad, but it's something that needs to be incorporated and lived. if we're honest with ourselves, when we travel abroad and you go into hotels or restaurants overseas, the level of service in many instances surpasses what we have in Barbados. People seem easy to serve, eager to serve. We in Barbados need to understand that service does not mean, good service does not mean subservience. And there's nothing embarrassing or shameful in catering to the needs of somebody if that is the business that you're in. So I'm going to ask your ministry as well and ask the BTMI. When I looked under the...
Honourable member, your 3 minutes are gone.
30 seconds, madam.
Go ahead.
Under program 40, subprogram 760, the general management, I would ask that within the general management there be an some educational push to advise especially those in the tourism sector what is expected of them and how the behavior, whether positive or negative, actually affects us all and influences the perception of Barbados abroad. So I'm placing these on your shoulders as my wrap-up. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the first question with respect to the very important issue of renewable energy unfortunately caused the honourable member, and perhaps understandably so because he is undergoing his first estimates, to misappreciate or demonstrate a misappreciation of what would find itself in the estimates document. The legitimacy of his question, however, is not negated. The fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister and I have had some discussions on the necessity for us to have what might properly be called a hotel refurbishment fund. And obviously that is not going to be located within these estimates, but would be a set-aside set of financing which would be specially accessible on determined rates so as to enable the hospitality sector to refurbish itself. Ideally, a hotel should be refurbished every 7 years. One of the realities of this thing that we call a mature tourism product is that it's not only mature in terms of its experience, but very often we have, in many instances, we have room stock that needs to be replenished and refurbished. And in some cases, a complete tear down and rebuild will be necessary. Obviously, the last 10 years have made life exceptionally difficult for every commercial entity in Barbados, and it has not been an environment within which it is conducive to do this. But as we turn our attention now, having stabilized the economy to a growth trajectory, part and parcel of that which must follow logically is the creation of a fund so as to access the necessary financing, so as to enable this country's hoteliers in particular to do the things that the honourable member quite rightly draws our attention to. He gave a list of things, the low flush toilets, the renewable energy, et cetera, and all of those I am perfectly aligned with and on board in terms of the principle. I also feel, ma'am, that there's another reason why we must do this, and that is within the context of climate change and the need for us to have resilience in the tourism industry and sustainable development. The fact of the matter is that as the world has experienced increasing systems, weather systems which have been absolutely devastating, we've come to realize that there are some things that we can do better. The honourable member made reference to the use of roofs of buildings. The truth is that if you look at what is happening around the world now, there are people who are putting vegetation on the roof so as to enable you to avoid the runoff onto the ground and thereby alleviate the likelihood of flooding around the footprint of a building which is on a flat area. There are people, ma'am, who are using specially designed pavements so that there is a porous nature of the pavement and it does not allow for the pooling of water. water. All of these are things which obviously come at a cost. Modern technology and building, especially in hurricane-ravaged areas in this hemisphere, are pointing us in that direction, and these are things that we have to enable our people to be able to access via a refurbishment fund. So in principle, I have no difficulties whatsoever, and I would want to say to the honourable member that my permanent secretary and I have had these discussions as well, and we think that the proposal that we can put to the Ministry of Finance at the appropriate point would be that the Tourism Development Act, under which concessions are made, can also be used as a tool to assist in this type of change, so that the requirements would be to make adjustments under the Tourism Development Act so that this type of input can now be recognized as being worthy of being brought into the country without having to pay impost and duty.
Thank you, honourable member. Ask the honourable member, Minister for Tourism, to move that the headstand part.
Ma'am, I am obliged to you and for your patience and tolerance of what may have been at times a laborious set of responses from my part, but I really wanted to share as best I could with the country all those things that my ministry feels so strongly about. In winding up, ma'am, please allow me to move that head 27 in the sum of $242,697 stand part.
The question is that the head stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
Question is that I now report to the Honourable Speaker progress and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honorable for City of Bridgetown.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 5:30 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 5:30 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber is so suspended.